Hello everyone, welcome to TechSend. And let's continue with this Python tutorial for beginners. In the last video, we talked about how to install a Python interpreter which will allow us to run our code. Then we spoke about IDEs and how to install 3 different IDEs like PyCharm, Visual Studio Code, and Tony. But today, let's discuss the concept of Python variables. Now, what's a variable? A variable is like a box or a container that has a name. Let's say box 1. And inside this box 1, I want to add an object. To demonstrate this concept of variables in Python, I'm gonna press my Windows key and type PyCharm and hit enter. If you want to know how to download PyCharm, make sure to check out my latest video that will be linked down in the description. Now that we have PyCharm open, let's declare our first variable. To do that, I'm just gonna name the variable product name. And this equal operator is called the assignment operator, which we will be assigning data to the variable called product name. So in the computer's memory, we have this variable called product name, and this variable will store data inside it. But what kind of data? In Python, we have 2 different data types. We have primitive and non-primitive data type. The primitive data types are like strings, numbers, and booleans, while the non-primitive data types are like lists, tuples, dictionary, and sets. In today's video, we will be only covering primitive data type. So in the primitive data types, we have first strings, and strings are just plain text, and they are referenced with either double quotes or single quotes. A best practice is always to use double quotes. Then we have numbers, and numbers can be integers like 1, 2, 3, -1, -2, and they can be float. Float means a decimal number or a number that contains a decimal point like 2.2, 2.3, etc. Then we have Boolean values, which are true or false. And the Boolean values are used in Python to make decisions. We'll be using them when we get to if statements. Now let's go back to our variable down there. So the product name will be a product's name, like let's say milk. And as you can see, I've written milk between double quotes because it's a string. Now let me print on the console the product's name. To do that, I'm just gonna press Shift and F10. And here you go, we have milk. In Python, we have this function called type, and this function gives us the type of the data stored inside a variable. So let's try it. I'll say print type of product name. We have class str. Str stands for string, so we know that milk is a string. Earlier, we spoke about numbers, right? Okay. Let me declare a variable called price, and I'll set the price of this milk to 12.99. Well, that's a decimal number, and how do I know that? Well, let's print the type of this data. Type and price. Class float. And yup, that's a floating point number. Now let's use integers. Let's say in your wallet, you have $1,000. Well, this is an integer, and how do I know? Well, we'll print type of wallet. Class int. Int stands for integer. Now we still have booleans. And how to do that? Well, let me declare a variable called isVerified. And I'll set this to true or false. Now, let's print the type of this variable. Type is verified. Class bool, which stands for boolean. In this section, we'll be discussing how to name a variable. As you can see, my variable names are comprehensive. They are not absurdly incomprehensive. So in Python, to name a variable, the name should be comprehensive, because let's say you name a variable like this and you set it to 1,000, okay? And in weeks or month, you come back to PyCharm and you don't know what this variable is used for. So now you don't know what to do with it. That's why the naming of the variable should be comprehensive. Now I know that this variable is used for pricing, and that's because the variable's name defines that. In this section, we'll discuss how to write the name of a variable properly. So as you notice here, I have this underscore between product and name. That's because in Python, the name of a variable should not contain spaces. So I cannot just write product space name equals to milk. I'll get an error. That's why the best practice is to put a underscore. But sometimes in other programming languages, we have different naming conventions. The first naming convention is the camel case. And how to write a camel case? Well, watch this. First name. So with the camel case, you'll have the first letter of the second word capitalized. Also, we have another type which is called Pascal case. And you're noticing that both of those two words, first and name, has their first letter in uppercase. But in Python, we usually use the following, which is the underscore. So that's a good practice on how to write variable names. Alright, that is it for variables. So a variable is a container that stores different data. And those data can be primitive and non-primitive. Okay, thank you so much for watching today's course. I hope you enjoyed it. And make sure to subscribe to join me on this Python course. Alright, thanks again and see you in the next one.